I find it hard to watch Fernandez. I find it hard to watch Paredes. There is an attitude to their players. Is it in them, the way that they're educated, the way that they grow up? They just have this about them where they want to leave something on everybody. You know, they're not satisfied with just getting to an opponent. They've got to push someone, step on someone. It's just what they do. I think we should be trying to stamp that out a little bit with the refereeing going forward. You know, young people watching it, impressionable. It can't just suddenly be a tear-up at the end of the match. I actually thought the Spanish players showed a great deal of restraint, and they didn't make that the story. They're the winners of the World Cup, and they rightfully deserve that. They didn't want to get pulled into some fight with a bunch of thugs, really, at the end of the match.
You might want to grab a seat for this one because what's unfolding around the soccer world is seriously massive. Forget the usual locker room drama, training ground clashes, or secret late-night party stories. This controversy has blown way beyond the pitch, and now some of Argentina's biggest stars could potentially face serious consequences in the United Kingdom, depending on how authorities respond. We're talking about a situation that has crossed from sports drama into politics, diplomacy, and even questions surrounding immigration status. Reports and public reaction have turned what happened into a much bigger debate, with emotions running extremely high. Some people are even calling for players to be removed from the country, although any actual deportation would require a legal process and cannot simply happen because people are angry. So how did things allegedly get this heated? The controversy centers on claims that following a tense match involving England, Argentinian players displayed a banner asserting Argentina's claim over the Falkland Islands. That immediately took the situation into extremely sensitive territory. The sovereignty dispute surrounding the islands, known as the Islas Malvinas in Argentina, has a long and painful history, including the 1982 war between Argentina and the United Kingdom. And doing something like that on British soil, that was always going to hit a nerve. For many people in Britain, the issue is tied directly to national sovereignty, military history, and the soldiers who died during the conflict. For many Argentinians, meanwhile, the islands remain an important national and political issue. That's exactly why this alleged gesture became much bigger than ordinary soccer trash talk. The backlash quickly went from "what were they thinking" to calls for serious action. Critics argued that players earning huge salaries at Premier League clubs should understand how explosive such a political statement could become in Britain. But there's an important line here. Outrage, newspaper headlines, and political pressure are one thing. Actual immigration action is another. Still, the whole situation is getting messy fast. What may have started as a heated post-match gesture has now become a debate involving soccer, history, politics, national identity, and potentially the players' futures in England. And with every new reaction, the pressure surrounding these Argentinian stars keeps climbing. The alleged gesture has been viewed by some critics as a massive sign of disrespect, and the backlash has quickly gone way beyond normal soccer drama. Instead of people simply discussing a fine or a 2-game suspension, some angry voices across sports radio, social media, and political circles are reportedly demanding something far more serious: reviewing or even canceling the players' UK work visas. Just think about how quickly this controversy has escalated. Critics argue that Premier League players are earning enormous salaries while living and working in Britain, so making an inflammatory political statement about such a sensitive historical dispute can look, in their eyes,
Argentina played with more risk, played with more rhythm, played with a feeling maybe that they have nothing to lose anymore, which freed them up and hold us back, because we obviously played suddenly with a feeling that we have a lot to lose. So we dropped immediately back into a deep block, which is also not a problem, but we could not. We struggled to stay active in that deep block, and we struggled to defend crosses in the deep block, and we struggled to get physical on the runners into the box.
Like biting the hand that feeds them. But there's a major reality check here. The UK immigration system operates through actual laws and procedures. A wave of public anger does not automatically mean somebody's visa gets ripped up overnight. British authorities can take immigration action in certain circumstances, including where legal requirements or public interest grounds are involved. But every case depends on the facts and applicable rules. That hasn't stopped the street-level noise from getting wild, though. Some hardline political voices are reportedly pushing for severe consequences and even long-term restrictions. Those are demands, not confirmed government decisions, and there is no automatic rule banning Argentinian players from English soccer simply because of their nationality. And now we get to the names potentially caught in the middle of this storm. This isn't some list of unknown bench players. We're talking about major Argentinian stars connected to some of England's biggest clubs, which is exactly why the story has attracted so much attention. One of the biggest names being discussed is Emiliano Dibu Martinez, the superstar goalkeeper for Aston Villa. Martinez already has a reputation as one of soccer's most provocative personalities, with his celebrations, mind games, dances, and on-field gestures repeatedly sparking heated reactions from rival supporters. Some fans love the swagger, others can't stand it. Either way, when controversy starts circling Argentina, Dibu is the kind of name that instantly pulls eyeballs. And this situation could put him under an even brighter spotlight. Playing the class clown during a high-pressure penalty shootout is one thing, but getting dragged into a geopolitical controversy involving the country where you play your club football is a completely different game. Emiliano Dibu Martinez has dealt with boos and criticism before, but this alleged situation has sparked a much more serious backlash. Some critics aren't just questioning his behavior on the pitch anymore, they're questioning whether he crossed a line outside normal soccer rivalry. Next comes Cristian Romero, Tottenham's defensive enforcer, a player who built his reputation through fearless tackles, relentless energy, and leaving everything on the field. But controversies like this can flip public opinion ridiculously fast. Some Spurs supporters may see any provocative political gesture aimed at Britain as disrespectful, while others will want to know exactly what happened before judging him. And then we reach Enzo Fernández at Chelsea and Lisandro Martinez at Manchester United, where the accusations become even more explosive. Reports and online claims have attempted to portray certain Argentinian players as major figures behind the alleged provocations. There have also been allegations of heated trash talk and attempts to rattle English players throughout the match. But unless those claims are backed by reliable evidence, they should remain exactly that, allegations, not established facts. That distinction matters because intense trash talk during 90 minutes of soccer is hardly unusual. Players constantly try to get inside each other's heads. But if officials determine that anyone crossed disciplinary lines or participated in an inappropriate political display, then the conversation could move from regular matchday heat into something much more serious. And Alexis Mac Allister cannot escape the spotlight either. The Liverpool midfielder normally carries a calmer public image and has become an important piece of his club's midfield. Yet his name could still get pulled into the wider controversy if evidence shows he participated in the alleged display. Being present, however, is not automatically the same as organizing or endorsing something, and any official consequences would need to be based on what he actually did, not simply on his nationality or association with teammates. Now picture the legal and financial chaos this could create if immigration authorities ever took serious action. Think about clubs like Chelsea and Manchester United. These giants have invested enormous transfer fees, wages, bonuses, and years of planning into their biggest stars. If a player suddenly lost the legal right to work in Britain, the club wouldn't just lose somebody from the starting 11. The entire contract situation could become one giant legal headache, but it wouldn't work like the government simply waking up angry one morning and throwing somebody on the first plane out. Any visa cancellation or immigration decision would have to follow UK law and the relevant procedures. Still, if a player genuinely became unable to work in Britain, his club could face some brutal choices. Training, matches, salary obligations, sponsorship agreements, and transfer plans could all become complicated incredibly fast. And this is where the money gets seriously messy. Imagine Chelsea suddenly needing to find a solution involving Enzo Fernández, while rival clubs across Spain, Italy, or elsewhere know Chelsea has limited options. That could destroy their bargaining power. Potential buyers wouldn't need to play nice. They could sit back, wait for the pressure to rise, and start throwing low-ball offers across the table. That kind of uncertainty alone could have club executives reaching for their phones and lawyers checking every line of every contract. We're talking about players valued at tens of millions, so even the possibility of an immigration problem could create major financial and sporting headaches. But now the plot gets even deeper because there's another huge question hanging over this entire controversy. Where does FIFA fit into all of this? Football's governing rules place clear restrictions on certain political, religious, and personal messaging by players and teams, particularly on equipment and in match-related settings. However, whether a specific banner or demonstration violates those rules depends on exactly what happened, where it happened, and which competition regulations applied. Soccer tries to keep politically provocative messaging away from the pitch, but when history, national identity, and international rivalry collide, keeping those worlds completely separate can become incredibly difficult. Yet FIFA President Gianni Infantino and the organization have not delivered the kind of response some critics in England are demanding, and that perceived silence is only making the controversy hotter. Among angry supporters, there's a growing feeling that Argentina's national team has developed an untouchable swagger since winning the World Cup, that certain players can push boundaries, stir up controversy, and somehow walk away without serious consequences. That frustration has produced a much tougher argument in Britain. Fine, if you will not do anything perfect, we will take matters into our own hands using our very own immigration laws. But here's the key detail. Public demands are not the same as government action. British immigration authorities would still have to follow the law, consider the individual circumstances, and determine whether there are legitimate grounds for any action against a player's immigration status. Meanwhile, another side of this debate points straight toward Argentina's historic claim to the Falkland Islands, known there as the Islas Malvinas. For many Argentinians, the sovereignty dispute carries enormous national and emotional weight. From that perspective, supporters may argue that expressing their country's position is an act of patriotism, and that players should not face extreme punishment simply for expressing a national belief. But this is exactly where the ethical fight gets seriously messy. Loving your country is one thing. Using an international soccer setting to make a provocative statement about territory connected to a war that killed hundreds of people is something completely different. For critics in Britain, that can feel less like harmless football banter and more like deliberately dragging a painful political dispute onto the pitch. And when some of those players also earn millions playing for English clubs, the optics become even more explosive. Supporters who cheer them every weekend could understandably have strong reactions if they believed those same players publicly disrespected something deeply connected to British history and national identity. That's why the atmosphere surrounding this alleged incident has become so tense. What began as soccer rivalry has turned into a heated argument over patriotism, political expression, historical memory, immigration law, and exactly where football should draw the line when national disputes enter the stadium. What makes this situation even more explosive is the idea of a social, political, and media campaign demanding consequences for foreign players over alleged behavior away from normal soccer action. For critics, Argentina's reputation in parts of Europe has taken a serious hit. What could have been an extended victory lap after lifting the World Cup in Qatar has instead been followed by one controversy after another, keeping the squad under a harsh spotlight. Critics point to heated clashes, mocking celebrations, provocative gestures, and previous incidents involving rival players, including tensions with Spain, and argue that the latest alleged controversy involving England fits into a wider pattern. Some commentators have accused members of the squad of letting their success turn into arrogance, but that remains an opinion, not proof that the entire Argentine team lacks respect, or shares the same behavior. And now this drama is spreading beyond Premier League players. Leandro Paredes has also been dragged into the conversation despite not currently playing his club football in England. His aggressive style, confrontations, and reputation for getting under opponents' skin have made him an easy name for critics to bring up whenever debates about Argentina's behavior get heated. Some commentators have gone even further, portraying Paredes as the type of provocative player they would never want to see in English football. Claims that he would automatically be banned from European soccer, however, are pure speculation. Disciplinary punishments require actual violations, evidence, and decisions from the relevant football authorities. They cannot simply be handed out because a player has an unpopular reputation. Still, this controversy is feeding a much bigger narrative among some critics in Britain. They argue that Argentina has received favorable treatment from football institutions and referees, and that the alleged banner incident represents another example of players pushing the limits. Those accusations are heavily disputed and shouldn't be treated as established fact. That's where this story gets especially dangerous. Criticism of specific conduct can quickly turn into sweeping attacks against an entire national team or nationality. Any action from UEFA, FIFA, British authorities, or immigration officials would need to focus on proven individual behavior and the actual rules involved, not somebody simply being Argentine. The Premier League could find itself stuck in an incredibly awkward position if this controversy keeps growing. After all, it sells itself as one of the most global, inclusive, and professionally run sports leagues on the planet. So imagine the headache if major international sponsors suddenly start asking why some of the league's biggest stars are being accused of turning football into a political battleground involving the very country where they play. The potential brand damage could get ugly fast. That's why it wouldn't be surprising to see carefully written statements from clubs such as Chelsea, Tottenham Hotspur, or Aston Villa if their players become directly involved in an official investigation. Clubs could distance themselves from specific conduct, stress that political actions were personal, or remind everyone that their players still have contractual and legal rights. But until those statements actually appear, none of that should be presented as confirmed. And here's where the stakes get even higher. If British authorities ever open genuine immigration proceedings against individual players, their clubs would suddenly be dealing with lawyers, contracts, sponsors, supporters, and football authorities all at once. Deportation would not happen automatically because of public outrage, and wealthy clubs wouldn't simply get to accept it like a transfer offer. Any serious immigration action would need proper legal grounds and due process. Still, the relationship between certain Argentine players and sections of the British public could take a major hit. If supporters believe players deliberately crossed a sensitive political line, rebuilding that trust could require much more than a quick apology posted on Instagram. And if any player eventually became unable to continue working in England, the transfer market would immediately become part of the drama. Serie A, La Liga, or League One could suddenly look like possible destinations. But even clubs outside Britain would likely examine the situation carefully before dropping millions on a superstar carrying a political controversy behind him. That's what makes this whole mess such a high-stakes situation. It isn't only about goals, tackles, trophies, or rival fans anymore. It could potentially involve club reputations, sponsorship money, immigration law, player contracts, and careers worth tens of millions. The clock is ticking, the transfer window waits for nobody, and the tension surrounding this controversy keeps getting thicker. Just imagine the shock if World Cup champions ever genuinely faced immigration proceedings that ended with them having to leave Britain. Images like that would explode across the soccer world, but that remains a hypothetical scenario, not a confirmed outcome. For the loudest critics, the message they want to send is simple: you respect our home here. It does not matter what your name is or what you have won. That hardline attitude has turned this into something much bigger than a normal football dispute. But England as a whole cannot be treated as having one single opinion, and any government action would still need to follow British law rather than simply deliver some dramatic lesson in patriotism. The controversy also raises uncomfortable questions about the responsibility that comes with being a global superstar. These players are heroes to millions of young fans. And when political disputes, nationalism, and personal egos get mixed into soccer, the example they set can come under serious scrutiny. Mutual respect is supposed to be one of the foundations of the game, even when rivalries become ridiculously intense. And this is where your voice enters the debate, because the punishment being discussed by some critics would go far beyond anything that happens on the pitch. So what do you think? If a player really did participate in displaying a provocative political banner, should football authorities handle it through sporting discipline, or could immigration consequences ever be justified? Drop your take below, because this debate is getting seriously heated. Or do you think the British government would be going way too far if immigration action ever entered the picture? Do you believe the Argentinian players crossed a serious line with the alleged political display, or were they simply expressing loyalty to their country, identity, and history? And here's the biggest question of all. If football rules were actually broken, should FIFA or the relevant football authorities step in first instead of allowing this controversy to spiral into demands for extreme immigration measures? I want to know exactly where you stand, because there are two very different sides fighting over this story. Should political messages connected to painful historical conflicts stay completely outside football, or should players still have the freedom to express national views without putting their careers at risk? Drop your opinion in the comments and keep the debate respectful. I'll be checking out what you have to say. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button and share this video with another football fan who needs to hear about this controversy. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next major update, because if any official investigation, disciplinary decision, or immigration development actually happens, the story could change incredibly fast. For now, one thing needs to remain crystal clear. Allegations, public anger, and political demands are not the same thing as confirmed government action. Whether any player ultimately faces sporting punishment or legal consequences will depend on the evidence, the rules, and the proper authorities. So, could this controversy eventually threaten the Premier League careers of some World Cup champions? Or will the whole storm cool down once the facts are established? We'll be watching every development. Thanks for staying with me until the very end. Like, subscribe, share, and comment with your take below, and I'll see you in the next video with another massive story from the football world.